Frequency Radio with your hosts, Steve and Alex.
And welcome to Nocturnal Frequency Radio here live exclusively on the New Visions Radio Network. And I don't know, Alex. I want to ask you how is it going, but how's it going?
Wait, you're scared to ask?
I'm scared, yes.
Yeah, it's going well.
It's going well. And what's new?
Nothing.
Of course. That's why that's why it's scary, man. I can understand why the spirits are afraid of you.
That's right, because I bore them to death.
Yeah, at least you're honest about it, right?
Why beat around the bush, right?
Exactly. So nothing's new. Come on, something's new.
Not at the moment.
What have you been up to? Like, any movies? Anything? Come on. I mean, don't make me pry it out of you here. Come on.
Last movie I saw was Fast 8, or the last Fast and Furious.
Okay.
I went to a screening of it with a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
So we got a chance to see it before it was released.
Okay.
That was all right. That's the last movie I saw. It was pretty good.
So did you feel special seeing it before the actual screenings?
I did. It was my first screening, so I was a screening virgin before that.
So did they say, okay, well, we'll let you in, but you have to write a review about it?
No, thankfully, no.
So
we did have night vision goggles to make sure that we weren't going on our phones and tweeting about it or something like that.
Well, if you were to rate it, would it be a good one or what?
The movie itself?
Yeah.
It's good because of the action. Like, if you like an action flick, it's a good movie.
So
it's like the other
just
Fast and Furious.
So in other words, it's just pure entertainment. You don't have to think. You just go in there and just enjoy the action.
It's a fun movie.
Good. Cool. I mean, that's what popcorn flicks are all about, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Somewhat. Not all the time. So yeah, we've got an interesting show tonight.
Yes, we do.
And I remember when this was being covered in sparsely in the local news here. Primarily because and we're talking about Elisa Lam, who most people will know is from the West Coast there in BC, and she first went mysteriously missing, and then obviously sadly being found dead in a water tank, again mysteriously, in a hotel that she'd been staying at, and the hotel itself, I'm sure we're going to get into that as well, the background of the hotel, because the hotel is notorious. The Cecil Hotel there in Los Angeles is quite notorious. It has a notorious past to it. And did that play into it? Who knows? We're going to talk about that. We're having Jake Anderson on after the break here, and Jake has a documentary called What Happened to Elisa Lam, and it explores it. And a lot of people will, is this a paranormal thing, or is this or is this just like was she in the right mind? Was she just, there's all sorts of scenarios as to what direction this might have went. Was it suicide, or was she killed? I don't know. We're going to find out more about that, obviously, when we talk to Jake about the research. And I must say, I'm sure Jake's done an amazing amount of research, not only on the case itself, but everything that surrounds the case. The hotel and the scenarios, everything. So, I know a lot of people have been following it since the video, the notorious video of her in the elevator at the Cecil Hotel, and how she was acting very strange, and it looked like she had been talking to somebody, or was she talking to somebody? You never see. Just her body language, everything was just odd. You know? And Alex, you've seen the video. I mean, what are your thoughts?
At the risk of sounding like a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
which I'm not, by the way, but it does look like she wasn't all there.
And again, we're going to get into, I guess, her medical past and how that sort of plays into it too, because I mean that sort of plays into the whole scenario as well. You know what? We're not going to waste any time here. We're going to take a break here, a short break here. When we come back, we're going to bring in Jake Anderson. For those of you who would like to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Dark Discussions. Facebook, just go to facebook.com/Nocturnal Frequency Radio, and you'll find our new page there. Like it, follow it, whatever, to keep up to date with who's coming on the show, guests, show topics, and we want your suggestions. I mean, we love to hear your suggestions. I mean, I think that is the best scenario when it comes to doing these shows, right? I mean, like somebody plops this, this whole story in front of you, and you're like, wait, I've never heard of this before. Those are the best. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to find these. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know. Well, because a lot of people cover stories like this, right?
Exactly, and there's so many shows out there that do cover them, and people are, but you know what? I don't know. I guess the angles are different. People ask different questions, and sort of explore different areas of those topics, and that's what's cool too. So we you know what? Keep them coming. We want to hear, your thoughts on what you would like to hear and who you'd like to hear on the show. And of course, you can do so by, Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to email us, obviously, it's nocturnalfrequencyradio@gmail.com, and join our BBM group, right?
That's right.
I mean, you can ask the questions there as well. And
you can leave comments and things of that nature in every post, or just general questions.
Yes, absolutely. And, hey, we encourage it, obviously, because we want to hear from you. Yeah. So without any further ado, we are going to take a short break here. And when we come back, we are going to have Jake Anderson on to talk about the Elisa Lam case and the documentary behind it. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Nocturnal Frequency Radio here live, exclusively here on the New Visions Radio Network. Hold tight, folks. We'll be right back.
Beyond, the television series that redefines the paranormal. Academic, scientific, and medical opinions that, combined with expert testimony, provide new insight into 48 phenomena that challenge the frontiers of human understanding. The Beyond series was originally broadcast on television in Canada and the USA. Now the series is available throughout the world on Hulu, Amazon, and TV Tibi. In Canada, it can be seen through Amazon On Demand. Come with us and take a step into the unknown lands that lie beyond. More information at beyondtheseries.com.
When you've had it up to here,
his hand is way above his head,
with the commercials and the same 5 songs again
and again and again and again and again and again and again.
There's only one place to lock it down. New Visions Radio. No commercials, the best talk, and the best new music all over the world. NewVisionsRadio.com.
This is Keith Age, and you're listening to Nocturnal Frequency Radio. Enjoy.
Because of the obvious threat to untold numbers of citizens due to the crisis that is even now developing, this radio station will remain on the air day and night. This station and hundreds of other radio and TV stations throughout this part of the country are pooling their resources through an emergency network hookup to keep keep you informed of all developments. At this hour, we repeat, these are the facts as we know them. There is an epidemic of mass murder being committed by a virtual army of unidentified assassins. The murders are taking place in villages and cities, and rural homes and suburbs with no apparent pattern nor reason for the slayings. It seems to be a sudden general explosion of mass homicide.
And welcome back to Nocturnal Frequency Radio, here live exclusively on the New Visions Radio Network. And yes, as we mentioned before we went for a break here, we'll be talking about an interesting case, a sad case really, of Canadian Elisa Lam, who was found dead in a water tank on top of a hotel, the hotel that she had been staying in. And, a lot of questions are being asked, not only, with how she got into the tank, but, her disappearance altogether, because she was missing for a while there. And her last known video, the elevator surveillance there, sparked a lot of, questions. And again, if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see the video there on that. We reached out to Jake Anderson, who has a documentary called "What Happened to Elisa Lam," which is in production. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really. From the very first time I saw the video, I'm like, wow, this is okay. Just so many questions, and I'm sure you were the same, and a lot of other people were, questions like, what exactly is going on? I mean, what was your first initial thoughts when you first saw this video?
Yeah, that was the first time I heard about the case. It was like probably about 4 years ago, and a friend of mine, he knows that I write about and I'm very interested in strange, spooky cases, and so he just sent me that YouTube video, and my first reaction was just kind of, what the hell is this? Like, I didn't fully understand exactly the context of the case, that she was missing and whatnot. So at first I was just kind of just like, well, this is a strange video, and then it kind of plays on you. Like the more you watch it, the more it kind of grows on you that there's just something very strange going on. And of course, there's multiple interpretations of the video. Elisa Lam, she had bipolar disorder, and this was diagnosed. She wrote about it on her 2 online blogs extensively, and she had actually had 4 different medications prescribed to her, only one of which was in her system at the time her body was found. So there's certainly the psychiatric angle, and there's certainly a case to be made that, with extreme bipolar, you can have hallucinations, you can have auditory hallucinations. So it's quite possible that she was reacting to something in her head. It's also possible that she was reacting to, and of course with reacting to something in your head, when you get into the paranormal angle of it, the psychiatric can kind of overlap with that, and maybe there's a way in which the hotel itself was maybe communicating with her in some way. But so there's 3 primary ways you can interpret that video, and that's what we want to do in the documentary, is show how many different kind of ways there are to interpret this. There's, of course, the psychiatric angle, there's the paranormal angle, and then, of course, there's the true crime angle, which is, was there someone out in that hallway who presumably then killed her, And so we kind of think the documentary, hopefully will take a kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen the documentary Room 237 about The Shining.
Yeah, I saw it. It's again, it's creepy as hell, but yeah, I remember seeing that, yes.
So we kind of imagine having a little bit of that kind of angle to it, which is just how many different conspiracy theories and just the entire almost ecosystem of outreach or ecosystem of theories that have grown out of this case. I mean, it's just taken on a life of its own.
I mean, the more and more I watch the video, and again, like you said, it grows on you. But I mean, it has this underlining creepiness, and I mean, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, because not everyone has seen the movie Dark Water, right?
Right.
And there's obviously that sort of, okay, was she sort of emulating that, or likewise, or whatever? The comparisons with that even are thrown in there, and for good reason. I mean, you watch this video and you're like, this just seems like something out of like a found footage sort of scenario thing.
Right.
It's just very, very eerie.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I love found footage horror movies.
Oh, me too.
It's kind of the ultimate found footage, really, and but yeah, there's a lot of synchronicity that involved in this case. And you mentioned one example, which is that Dark Water was a horror film. It was actually originally a short story, and then there was a Japanese film made on it, and then there was an American remake of the film. And the Dark Water, features, basically a young woman, being found in a water tank on the roof of a hotel, and there's all kinds of creepy things going on in the elevator, and there's water seeping down into the hotel, and of course one of the elements of the case was basically people in the hotel were showering and drinking the water from this water cistern from the hotel for about 2 weeks that she was in that water tank. And biochemists have subsequently said that it's probably unlikely that they were I don't know, I guess poisoned by the water or anything like that, but still it's gross to be
yeah,
if nothing else.
And I mean,
but, all kinds of synchronicity, and we'll get into a couple other examples, but that's one of the reasons I'm interested in the case. Is synchronicity is a theory that overlaps into the paranormal field that I'm very interested in, and philosopher Carl Jung did a lot of research on it, and I'm pretty interested in the synchronicity theory, so that's another reason why this case interests me.
And I was just going to ask, I mean, what were some of the leading sort of interest points or aspects of why the Elisa Lam case that you wanted to reach out and say, look, I want to put a documentary together on this?
Well, I just started researching it, and it was just a snowball effect of just the more I looked into it, the more I found weird things associated with it. And, I did probably done at least 3 years of research on this, off and on, not 24/7 research, which is probably what I'm about to have to do to make this documentary. But, a lot of research, and every time I would, I'd start reading at 11 o'clock at night or something, or I'd continue reading, and then all of a sudden I would realize that I'd been going down these rabbit holes for 3 hours, and it was 2 in the morning, and it just goes on and on with the different theories about what happened. There's so many conspiracy theories about there's people that think the Illuminati are involved. There's people that think that because she tweeted an article about invisibility cloak technology that this was some kind of psyop that they were experimenting with invisibility cloak technology, and some of them really stretch the limits of credulity, and some of them are, quite frankly, just kind of wackadoodle. But I think there's elements that overlap with synchronicity. For example, I don't know if this was on your radar, but so at the time in which Elisa Lam was in this hotel, there was actually a huge outbreak of tuberculosis in downtown Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
and it was thousands of people, many of them homeless, unfortunately. But it was such a big outbreak, because the Cecil Hotel is in basically Skid Row of Los Angeles. It's in a very dangerous area, big homeless population. But so there was a huge tuberculosis outbreak, and it was so big that they were actually the CDC was actually releasing federal scientists to investigate it. Now, this is almost you're gonna almost kind of think I'm making this up because it's so absurd and so insane that it's hard to believe. But the test they run for this tuberculosis test is, no joke, called the Lam-Elisa test.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And
this had nothing to do. This test was established well before anyone knew about Elisa Lam. It's just this incredible coincidence that makes you think that there is some kind of dark, sinister joke being played on us.
And you sit there and go, okay, questions come up. Was that really her name?
Right.
Crazy questions like that when that pops up, you're like, okay, that is just
right. Was it some way a false flag, some way of people involved communicating to each other that Elisa Lam, the name is in the media, we're running tests. There's just conspiracy theories about how the elites communicate with each other, and that's one of them. I mean, I think it's probably just a coincidence, but I mean, coincidences, and this is what Hume got into. There's ways in which he called it a causal parallelism, which is that things that are not really related in space and time can still have a significance and affect itself. And even in quantum mechanics, there is spooky action at a distance, which is that particles that have been separated by vast distances, light years even, what happens to one of them still affects the other across vast distances. And so there's just kind of this idea that mind and matter are kind of interconnected in a way that we don't fully understand yet, and that synchronicity would be a way in which a through line through which somehow perhaps there's a meaning attached to things, even if it's a dark meaning. Even if maybe this was meant to play out like this. Maybe this case has some special significance in space-time that called out to be looked at. I don't, fully understand it, but that synchronicity with the tuberculosis test, combined with the dark water, combined with even Aleister Crowley was he wrote a poem that has some references in it that seem very much almost like it's about a body in water, and he wrote it while staying at the Cecil Hotel in London, a different Cecil, but a Cecil nonetheless. And Aleister Crowley also, his thelmic, I think that's how you call it, belief, he was an occultist, and one of the beliefs that he and his followers had was in an extra-dimensional being called Lam, L-A-M.
Jeez.
And yeah, and so, these are just, strange overlaps in data that I think this is an ideal case to explore synchronicity. So for me, there's the true crime angle, there's the paranormal angle. Also, I'm very interested in the psychiatric angle too. Bipolar has been an issue in my life. My aunt had it, and multiple friends of mine have had it, and in some of these cases ended in suicide. So, bipolar is something that very much on my radar. So that's another reason that I'm very interested in the case. But synchronicity is definitely, I think this is a ideal case to explore dark, as Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero calls it, dark synchronicity. And Clyde Lewis, who's a paranormal researcher, he's one of the people we interviewed for the documentary, and he's been very supportive because he's just kind of obsessed with the case also, and he wants to go to the Cecil Hotel. Right now the hotel is closed down because they're doing a renovation. And get this, one of the things they're doing, they've spent tens of millions of dollars. One of the things they're adding is a pool and bar to the roof. Where
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding.
Oh, wow.
So it's it's almost as if they're asking for it. They're just asking for something creepy to happen on that roof so that this legacy, this story can just continue.
It's incredible, and I must say I found out about you through Ground Zero. I remember I'm a big fan of Clyde's. I listened to the show. I've listened to it religiously for the last I can't remember how long.
Yeah, incredible show.
Oh, I love his show, and you know what? I listened to when you were on there, and I'm like I have to have Jake on. I mean, it's just everything about what your research and everything. Not only the case, obviously, but I mean the stuff that you were digging up. It was just incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot, and that's kind of over the years I've kind of gone past like a lot of I've almost gone too deep into it because I end up talking about the stuff I've been talking about so far, instead of talking about the actual criminal investigation.
Yeah.
So I've almost gone too far down the rabbit hole where I can't look at the case objectively anymore. Fortunately, my co-director is, we have different theories on what we think happened, which also makes for an interesting, production. Go ahead.
No, sorry. No, finish off.
No, I was actually...
okay. Now, from what I recall, I remember you actually had a chance to go into the hotel and sort of record a little thing from there. Did you not?
Yeah, I've stayed there twice.
Okay.
Actually, I've stayed there maybe 3 times, but the last time I went, I had a cinematographer with me, and because we found out that the hotel was going to be closed down for a year, and we were like, wow, if we don't get this footage now, we're screwed. We're not going to be able to make this Kickstarter video. So he's a cinematographer, and he also is a drone operator. So we got some really cool drone footage of the hotel, of the roof, and and the inside of the hotel. And I've stayed there a couple times. It's just a disturbing place. I don't know how else to say it. It just feels like there's something wrong there. And I'm actually, part of me tries to be skeptical on paranormal stuff because I think you have to start with a skeptical approach.
Absolutely.
So that you don't get lassoed in. I'm sure you guys are familiar with, trying to stay objective so that, you don't get roped into, theories that may not bear out. But, so I go in and I just felt nauseous the entire time I was there. And I felt physically uncomfortable, mentally uncomfortable. I was scared for my life, irrationally. There was no reason for me to be scared for my life, but I was just petrified. And I actually, while I was staying there, I contribute to another website. It's actually a political website, so it's way different, but it's called the antimedia.org.
Okay.
And I contribute. I call in. I host their show on Thursdays, and then I also am a panelist on other days. So this was on a day where I was going to call in to talk about, all the political crap that's going on. But for some reason, I couldn't get through. I was calling from inside the Cecil, and the host knew that I was calling in, but they couldn't hear my voice. And he said, well, it looks like we have the ghost of Jake Anderson on the line. And I was just like, oh, man, it's just one thing after another with this place. And, as you guys are, I'm sure, familiar with, the history of the Cecil, and any listeners out there, I'm sure it's just an absolutely gruesome history. Starting back even at its inception in the 30s, there have just been dozens and dozens of suicides, people that It's just like the place where people go to kill themselves. It's unbelievable. Through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, it's just, there have been so many suicides there. It's unbelievable. And then, of course, there's, 2 different serial killers that have lived there. Jack Unterweger, who was a copycat serial killer who was imitating Richard Ramirez, who stayed there in the late 80s.
And that's the Night Stalker, right?
Yeah, that's Night Stalker.
Yeah.
And incidentally, Night Stalker lived on the 14th floor, which happens to be the same floor where that video of Elisa Lam was recorded. So there is the idea that perhaps not just him, perhaps a shining like amalgam of different spirits that have just accrued over the years. Is this hotel alive? That's what Clyde Lewis asked. Is this residual haunting that seems to be going on there? Is there a larger entity that just is alive in this place and that had a particular influence on Elisa because she has a mental illness?
It's well, it's not weird, but it's interesting, intriguing, and it's sad at the same time. How you're mentioning with the Cecil, and it's always been a place associated with suicides. I mean, there's like so many locations around the world that are known for this. Obviously, the forest outside of Mount Fuji there is Suicide Forest, and the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
There's so many locations, and there's just something about those locations that draw these people in, and bang.
Yeah, there's actually a bunch in Los Angeles itself. I mean, I did a post on the Ghost Diaries actually just about all the different haunted places in Los Angeles. Now, look, of course, with a big city that is the entertainment mecca of the world, of course, you're going to have tragedies. And, of course, over the years, they're going to accrue in specific places. But there's some really spooky spots in LA. I lived there for 5 years, and I went to a couple of them. The Pasadena Bridge is actually another place where a lot of people have killed themselves. And a lot of paranormal researchers have gone there and report, just hearing very strange sounds coming from the woods below. And it just, with paranormal stuff, my theory of it, I take a slightly more scientific approach to it, which is I think that it's possible that some of these paranormal encounters may not be demons or entities, but perhaps they're just echoes from the past. With quantum mechanics, we get very much this idea that, there's a way in which information can be embedded at the quantum level. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a research group now it's known as the Global Consciousness Project, but it was called PAIR for a while, and they were doing this research at Princeton. Mm-hmm. And basically they had people connected to these random number generators. And what they were showing was that the influence of consciousness on random numbers, it has a measurable effect on it. So it's not like people are going to be lifting cars above their head, but consciousness does have an effect on the physical systems around it, and not just in the actions we take, but in its actual existence. Consciousness has a measurable effect. They've proven it now. And if you think about it like that, what's to say that a very tragic end to a life where consciousness is very distressed, what's to say it's not going to leave a physical imprint on that location? And when you have multiple of these happening at the same place, what's to say that over the years, you're not just leaving this stain that affects anyone who goes there? It's just a theory of mine, but, I went to the place and there's something not right there.
Jake, I just have a quick question. I know you've done some history on the hotel itself, and you said that this hotel seems to have almost like a magnet effect for people who either commit suicide or just the low of the low. Now, has anybody done any research on what was there prior to the hotel?
That's a great question. And actually, no, but I'm going to look into it now because that's a great question. I don't know what was there. I mean, it was created in the heyday of Los Angeles, or of kind of, you know, the assembling of Los Angeles as kind of like a movie mecca. Obviously, LA was there, you know, long before the Cecil. But no, I don't have an answer to that. But that's a great question. I'm going to look into that.
That's good, because, you know, I mean, this is speculation on a lot of people's parts, obviously, just like, you know, the theory that the Illuminati were involved, but there's also the theory that a lot of early actors, if you will, or people in the industry were involved with the occult as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of occult. There's a lot of people that think there's still a lot of occult activity that goes on, and that can be seen through, you know, symbology that they use, you know, Illuminati type symbols. And, you know, I'm a big conspiracy theorist. I love conspiracy theories. It's one of the things I focus on a lot on the site. And, you know, with the Illuminati, I mean, I think it's actually more, I call it the deep state, because what I see is just a synergy between all the corporations and the government in a way where they're actively working together to, you know, kind of monopolize the resources of the earth. So I try not to use the word Illuminati, but there is definitely a very strange phenomenon of celebrities using that stupid Illuminati symbol. And you see it on their album covers. You see them do it in public. It's like, what are they like? Why do they always use that same symbol? They understand how stigmatized it is. I don't understand. I mean, is it a practical joke they're playing? Like, I don't get it. But yeah, there's a lot of occult stuff in Los Angeles for sure. And, you know, back at this time, that was, you know, kind of the early part of the 20th century was kind of the heyday of occult theories, and you know, that's when a lot of groups were assembled. I can't remember the big one, but it was a big
Golden
group.
Dawn?
Yeah, that was one of them. But there was a couple of just, you know, at the time it wasn't so stigmatized, so people that talked about the paranormal weren't immediately you know, crushed by the academic world. And so you had philosophers of all stripes, philosophers and scientists. Wolfgang Pauli, you know, who's a very prominent scientist, he actually worked with Jung on this. And Jung, of course, is the greatest. I really respect Jung because he put his career on the line in order to explore synchronicity. But Wolfgang Pauli was also one of these scientists who actually, there's actually a telekinetic or a psychokinetic effect named after him called the Pauli effect, where every time Wolfgang Pauli would go into a lab, it seemed like something would break, like fires would break out, and it happened so many times that his colleagues didn't even want him to come into their labs, so they called it the Pauli effect, and it was almost like his mind had an effect on the world around it. And you know, I'm really interested in that idea, and it's unfortunate that more research can't be put into it because of how stigmatized it is. But they did just declassify, and you know, anyone who was interested in this, I'd recommend looking into this. I did an article for the Ghost Diaries. The CIA recently, through Freedom of Information Act requests, they finally declassified hundreds of thousands of documents about CIA experimentations with the paranormal, and it's been disclosed among a number of other things that the law enforcement agencies across the world, including the CIA, regularly use psychics to try and solve crimes. And during the Cold War, they were actually using psychics to try and infiltrate the Soviet Union.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that actually on another show with a guest about that. Yeah.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. I mean, that's incredible to me. I mean, the fact that they regularly use, law enforcement agencies regularly use, I mean, there's like a template for how to contact them and like deal with them and how to like hire them. And like, you know, it's clear that there's something going on, that science hasn't been able to explain. And of course, scientists are very reluctant to talk about it because they don't want to stigmatize their work, and it's often called a career killer. It's like people that investigate UFOs often refer to that in the same way, which is these are career killers. If you go into them, no one will take you seriously. And it's really unfortunate because there's stuff going on that we haven't explained.
And that's you trying to explain it and say, look, this is really happening. But I mean, try telling somebody, for instance, like most people like something small. Well, it's not small; it's huge in some eyes. But I mean, back in 2011, the zodiac chart was changed back to the old Babylonian system, and most people are totally oblivious to it.
Yeah.
And then
I actually am too. I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, really? And I mean,
right.
Most people will say, "Well, that's not a real thing," but it is. I mean, it's a subtle thing. Most people don't pay attention to it, but I mean, if you were like, say, a Cancer, now you're a Gemini.
Right. Okay. Oh wait. I remember this now.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a very strange thing.
Yeah. I mean, they added the 13 symbol back in there, which is, I guess, because what was it with Gregorian and 13, the 12 apostles sort of thing. Sort of look at it. It was all prim and proper and nice and neat and even number. And I guess they figured, well, 13, it's an odd number and. It doesn't flow properly with our scheme of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't. The numbers don't add up. So let's just change the theory.
Exactly. But I mean, yeah, you tell people, look at, and I totally agree with you with the whole, as you put it, deep state thing. I really do believe there is really something going on, and I mean they're never going to allude to you and let you know. I mean, why would they?
No, they have an invested interest in keeping the population dumb. They have an invested interest in distracting people so they don't ask the serious questions. And there's no doubt. I mean, I'm a skeptic on some things, but I am not a skeptic on this. There's absolutely no doubt there is a vast, overarching, consolidated effort to control the world in a few hands. Kennedy talked about it in his famous Secret Society speech. Mm-hmm. Eisenhower, in his farewell speech, talked about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. There's a reason why the last 4 presidents have all been at war, despite anti-war rhetoric. We're going to stay at war. It's perpetual war. Orwell wrote, the purpose of the war is not to win. The purpose is to stay at war, and that's what we're involved with. And of course, we're getting, I'm getting beyond the Elisa Lam thing.
It all fits in somehow.
You get me started on deep state stuff, and I'll talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
I mean, there's but it does play in because it plays in that it has to do with an established elite keeping certain subjects taboo and keeping certain, ideas away from the mainstream, because the last thing these people want is for an informed public to take to the streets in full numbers. Your average protest has maybe tens of thousands. Okay, if they find out certain things, you're going to be talking about millions taking to the street, and that's when martial law breaks down, and that's when society breaks down.
Yeah.
So they have an invested interest in keeping people dumb. And I'm not, that sounds harsh. By dumb, I don't mean dumb. I think people are actually very intelligent and very compassionate.
But I mean, they'll follow. They'll follow. Right. Well, I mean, you look at how society is now, and you look at social media, and you look at things like Facebook and Twitter and everything else. It's something breaks on Facebook, everyone's posting it, so they're following. They believe what they're reading there.
Right.
They'll buy into it wholeheartedly without ever doing their own research behind it. It's almost like they want everyone to be, follow and it's almost as if they don't want you to be an individual anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I
agree, and it plays into this stupid fake news propaganda crap. The real fake news is what we're being fed on CNN
yes.
and mainstream media every day. That's the real fake news.
Oh, I know.
And so I mean, it was a brilliant psyop on their parts. Let's create this meme of fake news and use it to disparage alternate media and any ideas that we don't like. And now they have these censorship algorithms on Facebook and Google,
yes.
where they now are actively censoring the outreach of news that they deem fake. I mean, this is Orwellian, and it's scary, and it plays into all of it. It plays into paranormal research.
Yes.
It plays into UFO research. It plays into alternative media takes on politics and everything that's going on with the world right now. There is a team of people, and obviously I don't know how many. I don't know what their names are, but they are controlling the flow of information. And fortunately, we have the internet, but they're making the first opening salvo and trying to control the internet. And I expect within the next 10 years, my theory is that what's going to happen is there's going to be. I'm a huge WikiLeaks fan. I respect what they do, and groups like Anonymous. I expect what's going to happen is there's going to be a major cyber attack on America, and they're going to use that as a pretext to crack down on leaks and on the internet itself. And I talk about any chance I get, not because I want to be able to say I told you so, but because I want people to keep their eyes open, because there's going to be a cyber attack and they're going to use it to clamp down on information.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's without a given. I mean, you look at so many different events that have gone down, major events that have gone down, and you look at what happened before those events went down. The whole 9/11 thing. I mean, you want to get into
into that?
we won't get into it, but I mean, use it as an example. I mean, look at putting the fear in the Middle East and putting the fear in the wrong people and totally getting a whole nation behind them, because I mean, look at what happened. This major attack on our own soil. We can't have that, but it gives the government control. Fear is control, and it's happened. I mean, look at Hitler. Putting fear in a certain aspect of life, it could be something so small and precious, but yet if you put enough fear into that, people will follow and give you every right to do whatever you're going to do.
Look what one attack accomplished. One attack, and we've had a 15-year war on terror.
Yes.
That established the Patriot Act. That they never would have been able to have these powers of surveillance if it hadn't been for 9/11. That cleared the way for all kinds of attacks on our civil liberties. Mm-hmm. And I can go on about false flags forever, but I don't want to take it to that level, because then we're already off topic. But I mean, I love talking about this stuff, and I do think it's related.
Well, we'll have to have you back on for another show then, Jake.
That's great. That'd be great.
We'd love to have you back. We're going to take a break here in a sec, but when we get back, I want to get into, I guess, Eliza's state of mind and your thoughts about what was going on, like her body language and everything else in the video, and obviously the after effect. Theories and your research, and without giving too much away, obviously on what might be held within the documentary, because I mean, we want people to support the documentary, and when you have that finished, and I know you eventually get it out there, to support it and grab it and watch it and stuff. So we'll get into that in the second hour. But I guess just adding before we go on break here a little bit more about the Cecil, and then we'll go to break. You mentioned your feeling of dread and just total uneasiness. I mean, your thoughts about playing into the whole, again, the whole suicide aspect and the drawing of Richard Ramirez, living there and the whole thing. I mean, that sort of energy. What do you think it is, or might be?
It's I mean, the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah.
That's. but if I were to speculate, I don't know. I go back and forth because, I've studied mental illness a lot.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, like I have chronic depression and anxiety, and I've had it, my entire adult life. And it's possible I have, bipolar type 2, which is a lesser form of it. And my aunt had bipolar, and she committed suicide. And I've had, like I said, I've had 3 different friends that have bipolar. One of them was close to killing himself. Another jumped off a bridge. He lived, fortunately. But our brains are very, very powerful organs.
Yes.
And there's a lot going on in there that we don't understand. The brain is easily the most mysterious subject in science right now. And we're going to learn a lot more about it by transhumanist technology and trying to understand, how to upload the brain and all that kind of stuff. But the brain is a very powerful thing, and there's a lot going on that we don't understand. And so I don't want to underestimate the power that mental illness can have, but also just the power of suggestive influence can have. It's quite possible that when people go to these places that are supposed to be haunted, there's just kind of like a mass, not mass hallucination, but when you've heard that some place is supposed to be haunted, I think your brain probably kind of preps you a little bit and sends some endorphins rushing in that maybe has an influence on it. That's the skeptical psychiatric angle of it, and of course we're going to interview a lot of psychologists for the documentary. But the other side of me thinks that there is something more sinister, darker that we don't understand. And like I was explaining before, that when you have a location that has had so many horrible things happen, that it creates an effect kind of like The Shining, which is that the place itself exudes a kind of energy, a dark energy. And I think it's possible that this is one of the best modern-day examples of it.
Okay, we'll hold it there, and we'll take a break. And when we come back, more of this, and obviously getting into, Eliza's state of mind at the point of her last known sighting in the elevator, and her body language, the whole 9 yards, what might have been going on, and obviously up to her unfortunate death. So don't go anywhere, folks. You're listening to Nocturnal Frequency Radio here live exclusively on the New Visions Radio Network, and we're here with Jake Anderson discussing his documentary, What Happened to Elisa Lam, and more. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Nocturnal Frequency Radio. We'll be right back.
On Thursday, October 6th, at the Burlington in Chicago, and Friday, October 7th, at the Feed Arts Center in Kankakee, Illinois, an incredible musical and historical event is taking place based on psychoacoustics, industrial music, and electronic voice phenomena. This will include the first ever U.S. performance of Addie Newton's The Anti-Group, the electronic experimentation of Michael Boyd, and the debut of a new project by Michael Esposito, EVP specialist, and Addie Newton's called Matar. Based on EVP from Paris's underground catacombs, the standing stones of southern England, and ley lines across Europe and the world. If you have interest in industrial music, psychoacoustic research, or electronic voice phenomena, or experimental music, this is something you don't want to miss. Thursday, October 6th at the Burlington in Chicago, Friday, October 7th at the Feed Arts Center in Kankakee, Illinois. There'll be a special, limited edition flexi record with previously unpublished recordings by all three performers available at both shows.
Before going to Port Robinson Road, I would have been one of those guys that you told me that you were going on a ghost hunt. I wouldn't necessarily laugh at you, but I would think to myself, yeah, that's a waste of time. You know, there's really no point in going.
Port Robinson Road is not a horror film, and it shouldn't be confused with the mainstream Hollywood horror films of today. It's a mystery, thriller, drama, and I don't think it's anything that's ever been done before, at least not in this way. And I think it's vital to the paranormal world that a film like this takes itself seriously. I don't think there are too many films of this nature that take themselves too seriously, and this one does. At least I'm taking it very seriously, and that is why I think it's about time that something like this was brought to the forefront. Visit PortRobinsonRoad.com for more information on the feature paranormal film in development.
But going to Port Robinson Road really just took my eyes and peeled them right open and said, you know what? There's the possibility for this to be out there.
Hey everybody, this is Canadian musician Ed Roman.
Hi, this is Richard Lynch.
Hi, this is Christabel Llewellyn from Kinder Jazz.
Hi, this is JJ McGuigan.
Hi, this is Eddie Mann.
And you're listening to
New Visions Radio.
You are listening to Nocturnal Frequency Radio, hosted by Steve Jenny and his satanic assistant, Alex Montini, both of whom can't go into churches without vomiting.
And welcome back to Nocturnal Frequency Radio, here live exclusively on the New Visions Radio Network. And tonight's guest is Jake Anderson, and we're talking about the Elisa Lam case. Again, if you'd like to know more about Jake, you can visit his website at theghostdiaries.com, theghostdiaries.com. And his Kickstarter page is still up. What Happened to Elisa Lam is the documentary's name. Jake, you back with us? Okay, well, he's taking a break, so he's there. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Anyway, so what do you think so far, Alex?
Very interesting topics. All this stuff is very interesting. You know, I mean, I'm not a huge conspiracy buff myself, but you know, there's some stuff that I read and you know, and you kind of scratch your head. You're like, well, that's very, very possible.
It's funny. Our good friend, I don't know if you read our Facebook page, but our good friend Pat Fitzhugh asked a question, and the question is, what was the autopsy report on the cause of her death? Was she on meds meds for mental illness? And if so, did investigators discover a pattern of her missing or refusing to take her meds in the weeks leading up to her death? Why was she on the hotel? Why was she at the hotel to begin with? And again, we're gonna definitely ask all those questions, Pat, when Jake comes back. Jake, you back with us? No.
Maybe he fell through a portal.
He might have. The Illuminati got him.
Yeah, that's what happens when you talk about them.
But yeah, she I believe she was on meds. She did have medication that she was taking. Again, I don't know the full story. Jake will know more about that, obviously. And that you know, the whole pattern of her missing sort of thing, it's I don't know. But like I said, you know, going back to the video, you know, her state of mind was definitely in another world, if you will. You know, her body language, everything. It's like, you know, excuse me, was she in fear of somebody that was physically there, or was she in fear of something mentally there, you know? But then there's parts of it where she seemed like she was kind of, it looked like smiling. I don't know. Like, you watch the video over and over again, and you go, whatever it might have been, and we may never know, obviously, but there's just something incredibly uneasy about the whole thing. Like, you know, you can watch the video over and over again and take something different each time you watch it.
For sure.
Like, how many times have you watched it?
I've watched it a few times.
Yeah? And, okay, so you kind of lead more towards the whole mental issue.
Well, it definitely gave the appearance of that. Right? Because I've met people also who have had issues as well, for lack of a better term. I mean, and there were times when they felt that they were being watched. There were times when they would look around and just sort of be suspicious, for lack of a better term. But so when you look at a video of someone who's like looks around or thinks someone's following her, that's where I go to first.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't know the whole scenario. That's just based on watching the video. There could have been something else, and I don't know that.
I don't know. Jake, are you back with us? Oh, he's missing in action. Hopefully he will be back very soon here.
Yes.
We need to ask some questions.
Of course.
Again, you can find information about Jake's documentary, What Happened to Elisa Lam, on Kickstarter. The Kickstarter campaign has ended, but you can find out all the information you need to know about the project itself. Just go to Kickstarter.com, or just go to Google and type in what happened to Elisa Lam, ELISA, and Lam, 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 and you'll find the Kickstarter page. I think it's like the first or second link. I think it's the first link that pops up on that. And I mean, she went missing, I believe it was 2012. 2012 it happened.
I remember vaguely hearing about that too when it actually happened.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those cases. You know, the media, when it covers it, they'll just say, look at, you know, here in Canada, they'll just, you know, Canadian Elisa Lam. She went on a trip down to Los Angeles. She stayed at a hotel. They don't really tell you too much about the hotel. Why would they? Other than the hotel that she stayed in, you know, when she was found, one of the reasons why she was found was people who staying at the hotel were finding a really, really bad flavor in the water when they were drinking it. You know?
That's pretty gross, man.
So just think, I mean, like, you know, people are actually drinking this water, and she's, you know, obviously unknowing that she's dead in this tank, one of their water tanks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just to think, when they find out, the bad taste is actually, you know, her decomposing, you know, it's, I don't know, and I'm sure the hotel probably received quite a lot of
complaints about the water.
Well, not only complaints, but I'm sure they were probably sued.
That wouldn't be surprising.
Oh, I you know, and again, another question that we'll ask Jake when he comes back here, and hopefully very soon. I don't know. Jake has disappeared. I just want to double check. He's okay on Skype.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe
the Illuminati
the Illuminati might have grabbed Jake. But yeah, I like his. Like I said, he mentioned being on Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, a show that I have loved for many years. I watch it. I mean, I listen to it religiously. Well, I shouldn't say religiously. I mean, I listen to it depending on the topic. I mean, some topics. And again, I'm kind of like you, Alex. When it comes to conspiracy theories, I mean, there's some that intrigue me, but there are others that are just too far-fetched.
Yeah, well, because diehard conspiracy theorists will make pretty much everything into a conspiracy theory, which is fine if that's what they want to believe, that's their prerogative. But I don't have an easy time swallowing that pill, so to speak. Like, I know that there are things going on behind closed doors that we know nothing about.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
However, to assume that everything that goes on in this world is tied into a conspiracy, I find that a little bit hard to believe.
Well, not necessarily everything, but I mean, there's a huge. Honestly, when you look at the paper trail, and hell knows there's a huge paper trail when you look, right? Mm-hmm. When you look down to it, there are so many undeniable aspects that lead into, I don't know.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing with me with conspiracy theories and all of these documents that have been presented. Anything and everything can be doctored.
Yeah.
Right. So when someone releases a authentic, quote unquote, document from a government agency saying that this is what happened, it's up to you to it's up to you to choose whether you believe that the individual is being truthful, or whether that particular individual is making it up for their own purposes. Much like the paranormal, when people talk about, oh, my house is haunted by demons, It's the same scenario. You can either choose to believe it, or you take it at face value and you do your research properly and you come up with your own conclusion.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Hi, Jake, you're back with us. Hello? You there, Jake?
Maybe he's having an issue with his Skype. Maybe you want to try calling him back?
I could try bringing him back into Skype. I think that's what we'll try doing here. Hold on. Jake, we'll try bringing you back in, okay? So hold tight. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, hopefully this works. Very mysterious. Hello, Jake. How are you? You back with us?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm back with you.
There we go. We've got just.
We thought you fell through a dimensional portal or something.
Well, that maybe happened also.
Oh, okay. We've just had a flurry of questions. And we were going to get into, I guess, Eliza's state of mind and all that at the time of the video, during the her actions, her body language, and all that kind of stuff of what went down during the surveillance video. Now, through your research and obviously whatever else, like what kind of, I mean, she was, I believe, on medication, was she not? She did have some, as you put it, bipolarism and those kind of attributes.
Yes, she had bipolar, and she had a doctor had prescribed 4 different medications, and only one was in her system at the time, Wellbutrin. And for people that know about that kind of stuff, it's actually really bad for people with bipolar to be on just an antidepressant. It can cause them to rapid cycle. So it was probably a perfect storm of physiological influences that could have caused her to be, very discombobulated. And, she was staying with 2 other people. I don't think she knew them. I think she was just sharing a room with them. But basically, the story goes, the hotel has said that these 2 women were complaining about her behavior, that it was very strange.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think she was, regardless of what happened, whether she was, killed or whatnot, she was most certainly in a very bad mental place while she was there.
Like they eventually moved her, right?
Yeah, they moved her to a different room, and that's one thing I would really like to research more. And I have a Facebook group going for the research side of this, and anyone who's listening who wants to be a part of it, if you look for the group Elisa Lam Web Sleuth Team on Facebook, you can request being in the group, because I really want to crowdsource this investigation as much as possible, because there's so many people out there interested in it and who might have information. For example, I haven't seen any interviews with these 2 women that stayed with her. I think that'd be very interesting information. And yeah, her state of mind was not good, and but of course that could also make her an easier prey, an easier target for someone. And she actually had a tweet where she mentioned going out, and she talked about creepers and people, kind of referencing someone following her. So, unfortunately, people with mental illness are quite often find themselves the victims of crimes also, because predators kind of have a preternatural sense of when people are easier targets. So that could have been the situation here.
Another question. A part of it, and it's just like I said, a flurry of questions. Why? And I guess sort of do a background on this. Why was she at the hotel to begin with?
She went on. She was, struggling at school, and I think she had just broken up with someone, and so she was in a kind of a bad state of mind. And you can kind of read up on all of her points of view on her blog. She was pretty prolific in writing, but she basically called it her West Coast tour, and she wanted to do a road trip, and she decided to do a solo road trip. I don't know if that was just because she couldn't get a friend to go with her or not, but it was clearly a pretty bad idea as a female to take a solo road trip for that many days, weeks. And she originally went down to San Diego and saw the zoo there, and she, mentioned staying in bed a lot because of depression. And her plan was to go to Los Angeles, and then she was going to go up through Santa Cruz. So she had a whole itinerary of things she was planning to do on her quote-unquote West Coast tour. And she actually posted her locations and the time she was going to be there. So anyone following her closely would have had access to that. Now, I don't know how a stalker would have directly found her, but she had a plan, but I don't think it was a very good one, unfortunately. And just to second that, I think the world of her. I've read all of her writings.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was extremely intelligent and witty and creative. I'm a big fan of hers, and that's one of the reasons I want to do this doc is, I want an accurate portrayal of her instead of just this grisly meme that depersonalizes and dehumanizes her. I really want And that's why one of the people we're interviewing and working with was a friend of hers, and we're really trying to find as many friends as possible, and ideally even family members. Although because it's such a sensitive case, it might be hard to get the family to want to talk about this because they've been so burned on it. It's become such a traumatizing thing to have your loved one's name run through the mud like this. But
yeah.
I think she was a pretty extraordinary individual.
And that was one of the questions somebody asked: have you been able to get in contact with any of her family at all for during your research and that? So
we're in contact with we're in the process of communicating with the family. I don't want to go too deeply into that because it's kind of it's a sensitive issue, and it's it's also very, very tentative and whatnot. But we do very much want to have the family be a part of the documentary. And
again, as you're saying, you'd like to give this give her a proper image, because as you mentioned, the dehumanization of this whole scenario. I mean, most people are just looking at this and saying this is just a strange case, and you want to sort of put a human aspect to this whole thing.
Yeah, very much so. It is a personal.
Yes.
She broadcasted her life in a very personal way.
Yeah.
And she was very open with her problems and with her opinions. And that's kind of an angle that hasn't been looked at, probably because most people researching the case don't want to take the time to go read all of her writings and whatnot. But she was a very interesting person, and I want to get that across. And that this was it takes a lot of courage to talk openly about bipolar disorder and depression. And anyone who's suffering from those kinds of things could draw a lot of inspiration from her and her writings on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, when you mentioned you've battled with anxiety and all the bipolarism, and I can relate because I have battled with anxiety myself, a very brutal battle actually, and thankfully I'm not as bad now. I'm fine. Well, I'm not. Well, I like to think I'm fine now, but I mean, I know the battle. I mean, I've been through it, and I sort of can relate to that sort of arena. It can be pretty brutal. Now, outside her mental state, her body language and at times she seemed, I don't know, eerily happy, kind of smiling. Yeah. I mean, what do you think of, mentally? Is there somebody there? Physically, is there somebody there that she's communicating with? I mean, obviously you don't see anybody, but I mean, what are your general thoughts with that?
Right. Well, we actually interviewed a body language analyst who did a second-by-second breakdown of the entire video. It's pretty interesting. If you want to look at it, it's at bodylanguagesuccess.com, and he did a whole breakdown of it, and we interviewed him. And yeah, it makes it even more mysterious because a lot of his analysis seems to suggest that she was actually being rather playful. And a lot of his analysis kind of basically says that she's not showing that many signs of fear, which would contradict the theory that there was someone out there. But that having said that, she does there from her body language that she was thinking about someone. There's a passage where he talks about her elbows out laterally with her armpit exposed and behind the head, hair preening display. So he talks about these movements. He gets really specific about the movements, and so I don't want to go too far into that. But let's see, he says, the movement as she reaches up to begin this extended preen was fluid, slow, and deliberate, which is very important. He says, this display is a strong and highly reliable indicator of sexual interest. The person of her interest is either present outside the elevator or she is actively thinking about this person. So what this would indicate is that it's possible that perhaps there was someone that she had been in contact with that, you know, perhaps you had been on a date with him, or perhaps there was just someone that was courting her, or she was courting him, and that she was thinking about it. And so maybe it wasn't so much fear of some serial killer chasing her down, but perhaps just a dalliance that went awry. And so in this body language analysis, it's speaking to it's possible someone was outside that elevator. It's also possible that she was thinking about someone who is inside the hotel, and as she's looking out, it clearly looks like she's looking for someone. So it plays into this double theory of, perhaps no one was out there, but perhaps there was someone with whom she was in contact with at the hotel. And, that speaks to who was this person and what happened after this tape stopped recording. Was this person responsible?
Because, there's no other footage at all, is there?
No, and that's another issue that, we really want to get more footage released. The LAPD has actually said that there is additional footage of her coming back to the hotel with two men.
Oh, okay.
And she had a box. Now, so that makes it sound kind of creepy and almost like some science fiction thing. But realistically, this could have just been a to-go box from a restaurant she did that. But it shows that she was with two men. That's the LAPD saying that. It's not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
So we really want to get that footage released. And then we also want to analyze the tape more. I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with the fact that there is a big conspiracy theory about whether this tape was doctored.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I've gone through it, and I found a moment where the minute hand jumps twice in the period of about 10 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So the tape was most certainly cut. Now, whether that was an active malicious movement or whether that's, this is clearly a screwed up tape. It's an old codec. It's got a scrambled time code that you can barely make out. Is that on purpose? I don't know. But one theory is that if someone in the hotel was involved in this, or at least in covering it up, perhaps they went and edited the tape so that no one would appear outside that hallway. Now, that's a very strong charge, and I'm not actively accusing anyone in the hotel of that. But certainly when you have a tape this important that seems to have cuts in it, these are questions that the public deserves to know, and the family deserves to know, and maybe they found out. And there's been a concerted silence from the family and the LAPD combined. They've said virtually nothing since the LAPD announced that their conclusion was that she died as a result of an accident from her bipolar disorder. It's been nothing. They've said nothing.
So okay, play into the autopsy report, the official report of her death.
Yeah, basically the coroner, Ed Winter, he concluded that she drowned in the water tank and that there is no signs of drugs or trauma to her. But there are people that think that he was compromised, and there's also a kind of troubling pattern arises where it seems as though the coroner seemed to pretty much just kind of echo what the detectives were telling him. And he even uses the same language as the detectives, and he actually refers to the conclusion of the detectives, which is not something a coroner is supposed to do.
Yeah.
The coroner is not supposed to say, well, this is consistent with what the police found. He's supposed to just give an objective look at the body. And, a more gruesome detail is that she did have a prolapsed colon, which can result from inundation and water.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also of, why isn't there more, discussion of trauma to that part of her body? That seems like it would be very important.
Yeah.
And there was no rape kit conducted on her, which is insane to me.
Yeah.
And there's also some theorists who've said that because her body was in the water so long that it would erase some evidence. For example, any other drugs that may have been in her system, for example, like a date rape drug or something like that. So there's a lot of, I think there were a lot of procedural problems with the investigation. It's one of the things that we're going to go into. For example, the police conducted an investigation on the roof twice before finding her. They went up there once and saw nothing. Now, it's widely believed that the lid to the water tank was up because if she climbed in there and no one was responsible, if the police theory is correct, the lid would be up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is she going to jump down closing the lid at the same time? So if the lid was up, how did they go up there and not see that? There's not that much else on the roof. It's basically just the water tank and that's it. It seems to me that would be a thing that the police would see. More importantly, the second time they went, they had a canine unit, and the canine unit did not pick up her scent.
Jesus.
So some people think, based on that it's possible that there was a body dump, that the body wasn't there yet, but was later concealed there.
And of course they'd be able to determine that with obviously the condition of the bottom. But again, like you said, the coroner was probably compromised.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to cast any aspersions. I don't want to throw any stones. I don't know, and I haven't been able to interview any of them yet. So I don't know. It's that there's silence, the gaps in the investigation and the procedural flaws, and then the silence, and then the vast silence since then, just is very mysterious to me. This is like one of the most controversial cases of the century.
Yeah.
They could clear this up so easily with just a few additional pieces of evidence. Why will they not just clear this case up? And, to back up my theory that there were procedural problems, it's important to note that this case was taking place the exact same week as the Christopher Dorner manhunt. Christopher Dorner was the LA cop killer who killed a bunch of LAPD and then went on a wild chase and ended up chasing him down and burning the cabin down he was in Los Angeles. That occurred the same week as this investigation. So it stands to reason that they were a little distracted.
That is absolutely crazy. Like, let me ask you, because obviously you would like to sort of bring all the aspects that we discussed, true crime, the crime aspects. Now the paranormal sort of angle that might be involved. What are some of the, I guess, linkage there?
With the paranormal?
Yes.
Well, that she was possessed, and that, whatever spirit lives in that hotel coaxed her to the roof, drew her to the roof, and influenced her to get in the roof, or to get in the water cistern. A very kind of poetic, though morbid way of describing Elisa Lam's death is that, she'd been looking for a hiding place. she would often stay in bed and just kind of hide from society. She stayed in her room a lot. This person said, it looks like Elisa Lam had been looking for a hiding spot, and she finally found the best hiding spot she possibly could. No one found her for 2 weeks. And it's pretty morbid, but, I think, if she died in the water tank, and of course that's not for sure, she could have died elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The water in the lungs certainly suggests that she drowned in the water tank.
Yeah.
But it's also possible that someone ordered her to get into the water tank. Maybe someone took her to the roof and said, get in. We just don't know. But it's also possible that there was some kind of, malicious spirit born of the myriad souls that had died there in the past, including 2 serial killers, that was coaxing her. Maybe that's what she was reacting to out in the hallway. It was the same floor that Richard Ramirez lived on. Maybe she was hearing, and it plays into auditory hallucinations. Maybe auditory hallucinations mixed with a real voice. And this is something I want to recreate for the documentary, is just how many different scenarios could have gone down in that hallway that night. Man, it's just that hallway and what happened there. I mean, it's got to be one of the most mysterious videos ever released.
And let's reiterate, because you were there. You felt the ambience and you soaked in the atmosphere of this hotel. You were right by the elevator where it all happened.
Oh yeah, we filmed it. I was on I can't remember what floor I was on. I wasn't on the 14th or the 5th.
Yeah.
But I felt, the second I walked in, I felt it, and then when I took the elevator, I didn't feel great. And then in my room, I just felt trapped. Have you guys seen the movie Room, or 1407?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I love that film.
Oh, so do I.
And it kind of goes off the rails in the second half, but it's one of the best setups for a horror movie. And I feel like that's what I felt like there. Like, I felt like, as somewhat of a skeptic, I went in there fearless, because I was like, bring it. If there's some spirit here, I want to see it. I want to have a paranormal experience. But, once I got in there, I just felt just so out of my element and so scared. I was scared. I was literally looking through the peephole because I was so terrified that there was someone outside the room. So it just took me over, and it literally took me over. I didn't lose my mind and climb out on the windowsill or anything like that, but I directly experienced whatever is going on there, and maybe it's just my own mind.
And people will ask that question, obviously, or think that, because we mentioned it earlier. Just a mere fact of suggestion. You went there knowing what happened there, sort of thing, and was it playing with your mind?
Yeah, but I've gone to a lot of haunted hotels, and I've done some. Me and some buddies, we actually did a bachelor party at a haunted hotel.
Oh wow!
The Hotel Ledger in California, and some weird stuff went down there too. One of my we were doing EVP recordings, even though we're not experienced with it, and I do not know how to use that equipment, so I'm very much less than an amateur when it comes to that stuff. But I was there with a friend of mine who is an absolute skeptic, like atheist, atoms in the void, like there is nothing going on except sheer mechanical processes. Yeah. And we were doing, it was a bachelor party. I don't know why we did a bachelor party on a hotel, but, it was fun, and it was a kind of creepy little hotel, and we went to the room where George Ledger had lived, and George Ledger had been the proprietor of the hotel, and he basically had a lot of money problems towards the end. The hotel burned down like twice, and he had a lot of debt and issues like that. And so I was there in the room with my skeptic friend, and we were running the meter of, where it kind of goes, you can tell based on where the needle is at if there is any kind of electromagnetic activity going on. You guys probably have the words for this better than I do, but basically I started asking questions. I started asking, for example, I would ask, George, are you worried about money? Are you upset about your financial situation? And every time I asked that, the thing just went all the way to the right. It was insane, and even my skeptic friend was just like, "What the hell?" And like we kept testing it. It would go back to normal, and then I would ask a specific question to George about the financial situation, and it kept spiking. And even my skeptic friend was just like, "That is just really peculiar." And then there was this weird, creepy kid that was outside the hotel. He was like very pale, and the moment we pulled up and got out of the car, he said, "Are you here to see George?" And I was just like, "What?" And I was just so bizarre. So anyway, I've been to I like going to haunted places. I went to Elysium Park in Los Angeles when I lived there. And we were walking down, we went to the top, and the Elysium Park is where the White Lady is supposed to live. This was a woman who drowned a bunch of her children. Very morbid. But, the White Lady is supposed to roam the hills of Elysium Park. Mm-hmm. And we went at night, and on our way back, we were close to the parking lot. We saw something approaching us from a sewer, and it was small, and it looked like it was bipedal, and we were so convinced that it was a kind of miniature human. It looked like kind of a deformed child, and we were so convinced that it was real that we stopped and were just like, "It's okay, come here, like, you're safe, come here, it's okay." And as it moved further, closer to us, it looked like it was dragging a white gown out of the sewer. Okay, now let's cut to the end.
Yeah.
Basically, it appeared to be a skunk, and the white tail, the way its tail was up in the air and the way it was moving made it look like jilted movement of a child, and the white stripe was what made it look like a gown. But to this day, me and my friends still believe it's possible that some kind of shapeshift went on there, because it looked so real. And look, it's subjective. I can't prove anything, but we still think that the White Lady may have been there and shapeshifted into an animal. And there's a lot of theories about paranormal presences using the animal form to shapeshift. But, I try and be skeptical. I don't know what it was, but, that was a very strange paranormal experience I had. I had one more. I'll do this one quickly. When I went to school at Santa Cruz, there was a back history of the dorm I stayed at of a young man that had wrapped himself in an American flag and shot himself with a shotgun on the 4th floor and fallen into the quad below. And so me and my friend Jared, who's my co-director, we're just always been obsessed with morbid stuff like that. It's a sickness, really, how much we look into demented, sad, horrible stories. But so we started researching this case a lot.
Alex, I want to hang around Jake here. Sorry, go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And so, we were researching this a lot. We even talked to, an old friend of his, and said that, he had, mental problems and committed suicide. And a lot of other strange things were happening in that dorm. One guy took mushrooms and jumped out of the window and became paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh.
And of course, that's probably the mushrooms. But
Yeah.
But there's and then the entire first floor of the A building, everyone on that floor started reporting that they felt like in the middle of the night a presence was choking them. And this was like multiple people, and it became like a big scare in the entire dorm, and a lot of them wanted to change hallways. So, A1 became this kind of conspiracy theory of there's some presence that lives on the first floor. And during all this time, that's a common report of people with paranormal activity of feeling like they're being choked in their sleep.
Yeah.
And so during this time, we were researching what happened to David, the guy that committed suicide, and I was out in the dorm, and I was just kind of sitting there, and usually the dorm is very active. There was a lot of people there, and I love that dorm. I miss it, and there's always people out there playing hacky sack and studying and whatnot, but for some reason, this particular time, there was no one out there but me. And then I started to notice that there was one additional person that was out there, and he had been walking in circles around the quad. And when I finally looked up to, look at him, he was standing there and he was just staring at the 4th floor balcony. And afterwards, I was like, okay, please God, make that not the same balcony. This better not be the same balcony. And I looked it up, and sure enough,
it was.
He was sitting there staring at the same balcony that the guy committed suicide off. Now, none of this proves anything, but these are just these weird experiences that happen, make you think maybe there's something more going on in this reality than what we can comprehend right now.
Oh, I know. I could give you a whole list of things that I've gone through and realistically jolting me into researching as long as I have been, and I completely see where you're coming from, Jake, on all that. Okay, let's quickly get any links out there that you'd like to get to the listeners. We've posted them in the chat and on our Facebook group, and we will tweet them out after the show as well. But go ahead and get any links there.
Well, yeah, I run a paranormal site called the Ghost Diaries, and it's gotten pretty popular over the years. We get a lot of views. We have a big Facebook following as well. So that's www.theghostdiaries.com, and it's an active site. We do conspiracy theories, horror movie reviews, paranormal stuff, just basically anything weird. We just basically call it documenting the strange, and that's kind of what I'm into. I write for a very different kind of thing, but I write for a political site called the Anti-Media, and kind of plays into breaking down consensus reality. It's a much different subject, obviously. And then, you can find my Twitter link at OverTheMoonSF. And,
Now, I know the campaign on Kickstarter is finished now, but how if somebody would like to, I don't know, get involved or help support, getting this off the ground, how can they do that?
Yeah, that'd be anyone who wants to be involved, anyone who has any information on the case or anything like that. Well, you can the Ghost Diaries page will have my an email contact. You can find us on Facebook at the Ghost Diaries. If you just look up Facebook Ghost Diaries, I'm sure it'll come up. You can personally email me if you want, jakeanderson40@gmail.com, or you can tweet at me. And any support you want to give. The Kickstarter's done. We're in the process of negotiating possible co-production funds with some other companies, and hopefully that'll come through so that we can do this subject justice. But anyone, I know there's literally tens of thousands of people out there that are obsessed with this case, and so we're actively bringing it back into the mainstream because we want to do the definitive documentary on it of all of the different angles, and the emotional resonance it has on it, and doing some justice to Elisa Lam, showing people that she was more, that she wasn't just some crazy girl that died a horrible death. She was an incredibly interesting person that struggled with bipolar and had a lot of courage and was just a fascinating person, and we want that to be a part of the documentary. So obviously anyone who has any information on people that may have known her or people who know anyone in the case, please get in contact with me. That would be much appreciated. And or if you just want to drop me a line, or if you want to contribute to the Ghost Diaries, we actively take contributions. There's a submit button on there. If anyone wants to write an article for us, have at it.
Well, Jake, it's been great having you on, and you know what? I know we'd love to have you back on to sort of further the whole conspiracy and paranormal aspects beyond this. Because
down full time. Maybe when I get further along in the documentary or towards the end, I can come back on and share the progress and or anything else you guys want to talk about.
Absolutely.
I'm always down to talk about fringe stuff.
Absolutely. You said you love horror flicks.
Oh, absolutely.
Here's one for you. What's your favorite horror flick? It's a broad question, but some people are really direct. They know what movie they like the most.
Well, there's the one that scares me the most is The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And a bevy of zombie films. I love zombie. It's my favorite horror genre.
Me too.
Yeah, awesome. And I love.
You two are like a match made in heaven.
Yeah, let's go on a date.
Yeah.
and I specifically love found footage zombie films. So I love the Quarantine series. I love the Wreck series. I love 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later, I think, is also one of the scariest films. But if I had to pick one, I got to go with The Shining. I think it's one of the best horror films ever made. Classic.
Mine's Suspiria. Dario Argento's Suspiria.
Oh, I love Suspiria.
Well, once again, thank you very much, Jake, and I'm sure we'll be in contact, and we would love to have you back on in the future.
I'd love to be back on. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Okay, take care, my friend.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Take care, Jake.
Good night. Great. Really enjoyed it, and again, really cool. Brutal topic because poor Elisa Lam.
That's right. Yeah.
It's sad. Her demise. First mysteriously disappearing, and then a couple weeks later being found in the hotel's one of the hotel's water tanks.
Yep, that's right.
Sad. And hopefully, this is solved, if you will, because in my mind, it's not solved. It's still very much, unsolved. But anyhow, once again, I want to thank Jake Anderson for joining us this evening. I want to thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you next Sunday night.
Take care, everyone.
You've listened to Nocturnal Frequency Radio. Yes. We have our guest next week is Peter Sacco. More on that. Keep an eye on our Facebook page. Facebook.com/Nocturnal Frequency Radio. All right. Thank you, everybody, and take care. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
hosts,